International Media TV, television that listens to you.
Hi, I'm Johnnie Burrell. Welcome to the program.
Right now we'd like to recognize a voice, a major voice in San Francisco. Our keynote speaker this afternoon, one of the extraordinary community leaders that I told you earlier we would be talking about and meeting with today. She is the Honorable Teri L. Jackson. Judge Jackson presides on the Superior Court of San Francisco County. After many years as a highly respected trial attorney, Teri Jackson became the first, #1 trailblazer, the first African-American woman appointed as a judge to the Superior Court of California. Okay. She worked more than 14 years as a prosecutor in the offices of both San Francisco District Attorney and the San Mateo County District Attorney's Office, and she is truly an inspiration. We are so glad to have her with us. The Honorable Judge Jackson has dedicated herself as a chair of the State Bar of California Committee of Bar Examiners, amongst other wonderful accomplishments. I had a chance to speak with her. I heard the speech early because I was asking a ton of questions. So make sure that you pay attention because this woman has a lot to say. Make some noise for the Honorable Teri L. Jackson.
Oh, goodness. Thank you very, very much. I kind of cringe when I hear the word keynote because when you have a program such as this, we're going to hear many, many, many speakers. So just consider me as one of the many speakers who will be here today. And I've also learned through the years to keep it short and make your point and sit down. And that's what I try to say to my attorneys who come before me, but sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. First, I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to come and speak to you this afternoon and to congratulate all the awardees. I was an awardee, I believe, about 6 years ago, and it was such an honor. And by the way, my award is in my chambers, and I look at it all the time. The awardees, what I'm very impressed with, they cross everything from business to educators to media and community leaders, law enforcement, sciences, health, fine arts, social services. And I don't want to highlight one particular aspect, but I do want to point something out that's very prevalent today. Senator Leno kind of alluded to it, that we have a lot of issues coming up and we are going to be dealing with it. But the media recently has been very prominent. In fact, because of this is just Teri Jackson's analysis, so you can take it with a grain of salt, but because of the media, they have basically highlighted and put forth a person who's running for a major office because that person has received a lot of attention. So the media is very important, and for African Americans to be a part of that because they do shape what people think. They do have an impact. You know, I often remember when I was in school in history, and I probably have it wrong because it's been a long time, but I remember when they talked about the Spanish-American War, how that was started by the newspapers. Hearst started that war. So here we are, 2016, and we have the media with its impact and focusing on this one particular person who shall remain nameless because he is comical, theatrical, and so forth, and people are now voting for him. So this is why it's so important right now, and I am giving a little shout out to the power of the pen. And the power of the pen was very prevalent for me because but for, as I said a couple of nights ago when I was being honored by the Sun Reporter, which is our newspaper here in the Bay Area, but for the Sun Reporter, I probably would not be here. You know, when I was doing cases in San Mateo, and yeah, we need to acknowledge it. When I was doing cases in San Mateo and San Francisco, the first African-American woman to head homicide The white or the established media, they were nowhere to be found. The only time I would see them if a case messed up. But to honor and to recognize some of the cases I handled, it was the Sun reporter. When I got the call from the governor and went into interview with the governor, he talked about, I've been reading about you in the Sun reporter. So there are two things, and that's why we always need to support, and I don't mean to call this particular avenue out, but how important it is. So, and it also reminds me of what my mother used to say, your name will go places where you can't go. And that I have to acknowledge. So here we are, and you asked me to come speak, and I also recently spoke on a panel Monday, and it was women of color, and it was at UC Hastings Law School. And on the panel were all of these women of color, of course, African American, Asian, Latino. And one thing that's, there were several things that struck me. One, I was the oldest one on there because when they were introducing themselves, they were talking about when their parents graduated from college and law school, and all of the parents graduated from law school and college after I came out of law school. And then I realized what an honor for me to see this and to be a part of this, because there were those before me who allowed me to become a judge. So here I am with these young ladies, and we were talking about the question, of course, always, how did you become a lawyer? And what struck me was when they talked about how they had become a lawyer. And in fact, I just heard something recently from our MC that Christy was telling me about one of her friends, how she had become a lawyer. Her friend had become a lawyer because she won a book in an auction on how to get into law school. And each one of them, it was, well, I was in college and I thought I wanted to go to graduate school, I wanted to go to this, and one person was very honest and said, look, I just was not ready to leave education, so I applied to law school. And I thought that was quite interesting because not to say my contemporaries, but the reason I became a lawyer, and I said, was because I was a product, as all of us, but more immediate product of the Civil Rights Movement. It was not long after Brown versus Board of Education that I was able to go and integrate Colma Elementary School in Daly City, California. I can remember when my parents wanted to move and buy a home in Daly City and some parts of San Francisco. I recall as a child where they had to have white people pose as them, and then they went and looked at their homes in the evening. I can recall, because both parents are from Louisiana, when I would go back and visit my parents in Louisiana, I remember Jim Crow. I remember going with my cousins to the theaters and being in the balcony. So I said, for me and many of those who were raised in my generation, we were taught that opportunity, and that we were taught there was a mission. It's similar to a bald-headed man. That hair just comes around once. That's what my big mom used to say. For those who are follically challenged, you look distinguished for those men. So I'm not trying to insult anyone. But it was not I just fell into this. It was a mission. At age 5, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. At age 5, I saw the movie To Kill a Mockingbird and wanted to be not Atticus Finch, but to stand up to do what is right, regardless of what was wrong. But before that, Dr. Hickman said, I have to tell people, how did I get here? It wasn't just that Terry Jackson just saw the movie To Kill a Mockingbird. It started with my father and my mother. My father and mother, as I said, grew up in Louisiana. My father went to Southern University. And when Daddy went to Southern, that was before World War II, he could not tolerate anyone other than black because of the indignity that he had suffered. And my father just did not, and he used to say, I did not see a white person as a good person. Until he went to Southern and he read a book. A book. He took a literature class, and it was a book written by Shakespeare. And he read the story of the Merchant of Venice. In the Merchant of Venice, there was a lawyer named Portia. And Daddy read about how fair and how just And my father realized at that time, a white man wrote this. And he started to rethink his attitudes. And so, of course, he was drafted. He went off to World War II. If we had time, I would tell you the history of my father, of just a little glimpse. He was one of the few combat units in the Army. But what he was sent out, his little unit, there were 6 of them, they were sent out in North Africa to be the decoys for the German artillery. Remember the movie Glory? That's what my dad's little unit did. And the 6 of them from Southern, you had the Tuskegee Institute, and you had the men from Southern. They then returned, the 6 of them returned. My father was thinking if he should survive this, he was going to go back to Jonesboro Lodge, Louisiana, marry the homecoming queen, and come to California. My mother was the homecoming queen. Now, my mother just recently passed away. If she heard this story, she would say, Terry, we fell in love. Yes, he did eventually, but Daddy had an agenda, Mama. Okay. But my dad thought, while he was sitting there, dealing with the German artillery, knowing that he was a sacrificial lamb, that if he should marry the homecoming queen, which he did, they would have a daughter, name her Portia, and she would become a lawyer. Now, of course, you're looking at your program and saying, I see Terry. They did have a daughter. My sister, my older sister, is named Portia. And Portia was supposed to be the lawyer. I came 4 years later, and I was named after her imaginary friend. A lot of therapy. So, what did they do? Dad and Mom on this agenda. They're going to make sure that that daughter, Portia, her destiny, P-O-R-T-I-A, out of Shakespeare, not the car, but P-O-R-T-I-A, was going to be Portia. For those of you who remember, there were the TV programs called The Young Defenders, Perry Mason, and on and on and on. So, and Portia would look at that yawn and say, forget it. The movie came out, To Kill a Mockingbird. And my father and mother said, this is it. This is Portia's destiny. We're going to take her to this movie. And they scrambled, because I remember they called my godparents. And they said, Willie, can you come take care of Terry, because we got to take Portia to the movie. So Portia, it was all a family, raised by a village. So her godparents knew, but they were all busy. And my father, I remember him saying to my mother, don't worry, Terry will just fall asleep. She's only 5. And Portia will watch this movie and realize her destiny. So we go into the movie. They had a blanket, got me all comfortable for me to fall asleep. Portia is sitting at in her little movie seat. Portia fell asleep. I watched the movie. I walked out of the movie and said, I want to be a lawyer. At that point, they just go side Portia, and then it was all about me. My father and mother, they had one car. My father worked at the post office at Rincon Annex. My mother worked at Hillcrest Juvenile Hall in San Mateo. My father worked at night, the graveyard shift. My mother worked during the day. And so they would take that one car, and anytime there was a trial, particularly if it involved an African American or back in those days a Negro, I would go to court. My father would take me to court as though I was going to a football, basketball game, and whatever else. I saw people such as Judge Kennedy, Judge Reynolds, and I even saw our Mayor Brown in the courtroom. I remember when I was a little girl watching Huey Newton coming in and watching those trials. And my father and mother, they told me this, I don't recall this. I made a statement, why aren't there any black women in that courtroom? And my father said, and my mother reminded me, you will be in that courtroom someday. So life goes on. It was always about being a lawyer. And at one point, as a lawyer, I thought, maybe I'll go into international law, until I took a course, and this one trial lawyer who was teaching this trial seminar course said, you are not good enough to be a trial lawyer. Game was on. And from there, I put aside my master's in foreign service and getting my JD, and I was taking every clinical program, and I became a lawyer down in San Mateo. I was the first African-American woman to be a deputy DA down there. So, back to the panel, all of this was going on in my mind when I was hearing these young ladies talk about they fell into this. And what was going through my mind is that how many physical exclusions I dealt with. But as the panel progressed with these young ladies, I started to hear about the psychological exclusions that we as people of color, and particularly women, we still deal with in 2016. You know, it reminds me of what Chris Rock said at the Academy, where he said, "We like you, Rhonda, but you're not a Kappa." That's the psychological exclusions that we still deal with. The unconscious bias. We like this judge, but this judge can't handle complex litigation, so therefore we will assign them to the family law or even in the criminal or at the Hall of Justice. Not because there is a need, but because we get typecast. It still goes on today, and that's one of the things that I fight. There's 1,600 trial lawyers in the state of California. I will bet my bottom dollar 1,400 of them know me well. Because I fight for, as well as a group of us, that when we get appointed to the bench, we are not there saying, "Hallelujah, we have made it." When we get appointed to the bench, we are handling every case that comes before those doors, be it employment to probate, that we are not typecast to only handle a criminal docket. And that is what the struggle is about. And as I was listening to these young ladies, and they were talking about their going to the mountaintop, getting into the big firms, and only to be told, "You are partnership material, but not yet." And at that point I said, oh, we have a common bond. We are still dealing with. Theirs was a rude awakening, but they are awakened. And where they realize that this is what my parents have been talking about, and that you just don't have to see the physical barriers, but the psychological barriers are just as deadly and just as potent as when you would see a sign that said whites only. So when we shared our experiences, and we found we had this common ground where I said, oh yes, I do understand what you're talking about. That when you are bringing in the business, but for some reason your realization is not the same as maybe your white counterparts, and they're saying, okay, this person will make partner in 7 years, but we're going to make you partner in 10 years. You know there's that disparity. That's that unconscious bias. So what do we do about it, folks? You know, every time I've heard the word no, I should be in a fetal position. I'm sure that's an experience we've all had, one way or another. That even if you're in the entertainment business, you're not the right look for the part. Or if you are starting out your own business and you're going to get that small business loan, we like your idea, but we think you're risky. How often have we heard that? So what I'm here to say, because I'm supposed to be encouraging, because I can say, oh, things are good. No, they are, but we have a lot of work to do. You know, and for those of you who have heard me speak before, I often talk about two things. And one of them, which it was so amazing to me, is the song that was sung by our little vocalist, I Don't Feel No Ways Tired. I call it I Don't Feel No Ways Tired. And I told Thais, in my chambers, you know, when you come into courtroom, you have Judge Jackson on the bench, and then when you come into the chambers, you see our name, the Honorable Judge Jackson. So it's a big plaque. And what I have is this little card every time I get off the bench, because trust me, there are times that you just kind of wonder, is it me? And I have this in order for me to get back onto that bench, and it says, I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. No one told me that this road would be easy, but I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. And that is on my desk. Every morning, every evening, and when I take a break, and when I have an attorney sitting across from me who does not want to give the same respect as he would to a male counterpart, I look at that sign and it keeps me going. And what I like to stress is that it's not just me, it's about all of you. You are the reason I'm here today. And for those who are being honored, the reason why you're getting honored is because of all of us. So we're not doing this alone. So if I can leave another thing that keeps me going. Several years ago, I was honored by the Bar Association in San Francisco as cracking the glass ceiling. And in fact, I have this portrait. It's in my chambers. And I remember something what Hillary Clinton said, that she cracked that glass ceiling 9 years ago or 8 years ago. And then I started thinking about, why do I want to crack a glass ceiling of this building? Why do I even want to break? Because when I hear I have to crack something, that means there is a barrier there. And I start thinking about the building of the ceiling that I want to crack. So for those of you who have heard me say this, I'm sorry, but this is my philosophy. For those of you who haven't heard me say this, I hope you understand where I'm coming from. This building of a ceiling that I'm cracking is a building that is based on, and its foundation is based on bigotry, homophobia, racism, sexism, and every ism imaginable. Why do I want to break this ceiling of that building? My father taught me, whatever I get into, which was supposed to be a lawyer, his thing was, you are not to go in there and rock the boat. You are there to turn the boat over. So my father, in translation to me, meant, that means you build a new boat. So this building is a building that we should keep. This is the computer age. You know how you have those Google campuses? We'll keep this building on the campus to remind us of what went wrong. But our goal, our charge, our mission is to build a new building. This building has wonderful ingredients. The ingredients to build this building, this new building, is based on our Constitution. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, all people are created equal. What a wonderful foundation to build this new building on. Now, because I know I don't like to do hard work, but we have the mortar. We have the ingredients as well. All the blood, sweat, and tears of those of us before us. All the blood, sweat, and tears of those of us today. That's the ingredients to build this building. And what would this building look like? This is Terry Jackson's vision of the new building. Every other day I'll look at the old one to make sure I'm not building this new building like that one. But this building will be wide enough, long enough, tall enough, where there are no stairs to climb. This building will be wide enough, big enough, and tall enough where the table is so long, so wide, that there will be people who look like me, don't look like me, who don't believe my philosophies, but we're all sitting at that same table, and we have a voice to be heard. This building would be like that song in Happy. It will be a room without a roof. Because when you have a roof, you got limitations. When you don't have that roof, you can keep on going. That's the building that we are fighting for. That's the building that we should strive for. And that's the building where we will eliminate this unconscious bias. And so I say to you, what a wonderful day this is. But this is our mission. This is our agenda, and we can do it. Thank you very much.
Yes.
What often happens when I tell the Portia story, people will come up to me and say, what happened to Portia? So I have to tell you, Portia is alive and well. And they went back to reclaim her because she had two beautiful twin boys. And they went on to play in the NBA. Jason Collins, the first openly gay NBA player. That's my baby. And the other one is Jaron Collins, who is the assistant coach for the Warriors. So Portia's back in the good graces.
The Honorable Teri Jackson. Keep it going, ladies and gentlemen.